You feel fine. That's the whole problem. You went in for your checkup. Blood pressure, decent. Cholesterol, in range. The doctor nodded, said keep doing what you're doing. See you next year. You walked out feeling like you passed the test. And maybe you did pass the one they gave you, but there's a number they probably never ran. A number that can be quietly climbing for years while everything else on the report looks perfectly normal. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't show up on the scale. And by the time it finally makes noise, the damage has usually already started. That number has a name. It's called hs-CRP. And once you understand what it's telling you, you're going to wonder why nobody handed it to you sooner. Here's the thing, and I want you to hear this before anything else. If your doctor didn't check it, that is not a failure on your part. And honestly, it's not really on them either. It's just not on the standard panel most people get. The routine checkup was built to catch the obvious stuff. This number lives one layer underneath that. So if you've never heard of it, you're in good company. Most people over 50 haven't. That's exactly why this is worth 10 minutes of your time. Let me paint you a picture of what this number actually is. Think about the smoke detectors in your house. Not the fire itself. The detectors. They sit up there on the ceiling, quiet, doing nothing, until the moment something starts to smolder. Then they scream. hs-CRP is your body's version of that alarm. The letters stand for high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, which is a mouthful, so let's just call it the alarm. Your liver makes this protein and releases it into your blood whenever there's inflammation somewhere in your body. A little inflammation is normal. It's how you heal a cut, fight off a cold, recover from a hard workout. That's the alarm doing its job and then going quiet again. But here's what changes as we get older. Sometimes the alarm never fully switches off. It just sits there, low, humming in the background, all day, every day. Not screaming, not loud enough for you to notice, just enough to tell a trained eye that something is smoldering inside. Doctors call this chronic low-grade inflammation. And that low, steady hum is what quietly wears down your arteries, your brain, and your metabolism over the years. Let me show you how that actually does damage, because when I first understood this, it changed how I thought about the whole thing. Picture the inside wall of an artery as a smooth, clean pipe. When there's constant low inflammation in your blood, it's like that pipe wall keeps getting tiny irritations that never fully heal. Your body tries to patch each spot, and over the years those patches build up into what doctors call plaque. Here's the scary but important part. It's not usually the slow buildup that gets people. It's when one of those inflamed patches cracks open, like a scab getting knocked off, and the body rushes to clot it. That clot is what blocks the pipe. That's a heart attack. So inflammation isn't just sitting there. It's the thing making those patches fragile in the first place. That's why a number that measures inflammation can warn you about a heart attack that cholesterol alone might miss. Now, why should you trust that this little number means anything at all? Because one of the biggest names in heart research staked his career on it. His name is Dr. Paul Ridker, at Brigham and Women's Hospital, part of Harvard. For decades, the story of heart disease was all about cholesterol. Ridker had a different idea. He suspected that inflammation, that quiet hum, was driving heart attacks just as much as the cholesterol was. So he tested it. Over 20 large studies later, the pattern held up. People with a high hs-CRP were at real, measurable risk of a future heart attack or stroke, even when their cholesterol looked fine. And in a lot of those studies, this one inflammation number predicted trouble at least as well as cholesterol, blood pressure, or smoking did. Read that again. A number most people have never had run was pulling the same weight as the big famous ones. Then came the study that really made people sit up. It was called Jupiter, and it's the part that turns this from interesting to important. Here's the setup. Researchers took almost 18,000 people who, on paper, looked healthy. Their cholesterol was fine. Under the old rules, nobody would have put them on any treatment. The only red flag was a raised hs-CRP, that quiet alarm, humming. They put half the group on a statin, half on a placebo, and they waited to see what happened. The results were so lopsided they stopped the trial early. That almost never happens, and when it does, it's because it would be unfair to keep the other half untreated. The people whose inflammation got treated had 44% fewer major heart events. Heart attacks specifically dropped by more than half. Strokes dropped by nearly half. And remember, These were folks whose cholesterol already looked good. The only thing that flagged them was the alarm nobody usually checks. So let's talk about what the actual number means, because this is the part you can take straight to your doctor. hs-CRP is measured in milligrams per liter, and there are 3 simple zones. Under 1, that's the low zone. That's where you want to be. Between 1 and 3, that's the middle, average risk. Above 3, that's the high zone, the one worth a real conversation. There's one catch, and it matters. If the number comes back really high, like over 10, that usually doesn't mean your heart. It usually means you were fighting something the day of the test. A cold, a flare-up, even a bad tooth. The alarm can't tell the difference between a smoldering wire and someone burning toast. That's why the smart move is to test it twice, a couple weeks apart, when you're feeling well, and take the average. 1 reading is a snapshot. 2 readings tell the real story. Now here's a layer most channels skip, and it's a big one. This alarm isn't only about your heart. That same quiet inflammation has been tied to how your body handles blood sugar, which is the road to type 2 diabetes. It's been linked to the slow changes in the aging brain. Ridker's own work showed a high hs-CRP could help predict who was heading toward high blood pressure and diabetes down the line, not just heart trouble. So this isn't one narrow test for one narrow problem. It's more like a window into how much wear and tear is happening across your whole body at once. One number, a very wide view. That's why it's a shame it gets left off the form. And here's a piece that matters if you're a woman, because it almost never gets said out loud. Inflammation doesn't behave the same in every body, and menopause changes the game. Estrogen, it turns out, has a calming effect on inflammation. So when estrogen drops during and after menopause, that quiet alarm can start humming a little louder, even if nothing else in your life changed. This is part of why a woman's heart risk climbs in the years after menopause, catching up to men's after decades of being lower. If you're a woman in your 50s, this isn't a reason to worry. It's a reason to be curious about your own number, because the old assumption that heart disease is mostly a man's problem left a lot of women getting checked too late. You get to be the exception who asks early. Now you might be wondering, if this number is so useful, why on earth isn't it just standard? Fair question. Part of it is history. The routine panel was built decades ago around cholesterol, and medicine changes slowly. Part of it is that inflammation is a little messier than cholesterol. It bounces around, it reacts to a cold or a sore tooth, so it takes a bit more care to read correctly, and busy clinics lean on the cleaner numbers. It's not a conspiracy, it's just inertia. But that's exactly why you knowing to ask puts you a step ahead, instead of waiting for the system to catch up to you. Okay, this is the part that matters most, because knowing a number is useless if you can't do anything about it. So here's what actually helps, and the good news is a lot of it is in your hands. First and simplest, ask for the test. Next time you're getting blood drawn anyway, ask your doctor, specifically, can we add an hs-CRP? Say high sensitivity, because the regular CRP test is a blunter tool built for infections, not for this. You want the sensitive one. Getting the number is step 1, and it costs you nothing but the asking. Second, if the number comes back up in that higher zone, know this. It moves. This is not a life sentence carved in stone. Losing even 5 to 10% of your body weight, if you're carrying extra, has been shown to bring inflammation down measurably. Not all of it. Just that slice. But it's real, and it counts. Third, move your body, regularly and gently. You don't need to punish yourself at a gym. Regular activity, the daily walk, calms this system down over time. The alarm responds to consistency, not to heroics. Fourth, look at what's on your plate and what's in your habits. More whole foods, more vegetables, more of the good fats like olive oil and fish, less of the heavily processed stuff. And if you smoke, this is one more voice telling you gently that quitting turns the alarm down like almost nothing else can. None of these are miracle cures. I'm not going to insult you by pretending they are. But together, over months, they genuinely move this number. And they happen to be the same things that help nearly everything else too. And through all of it, your doctor is your partner. If your number's high, that's not a moment to panic. It's a moment for a real conversation about your whole picture, your family history, your other numbers, what makes sense for you specifically. The point of knowing isn't fear. The point of knowing is that you finally get to do something. So think back to that checkup. You walked out feeling fine, and maybe everything really is fine. But now you know there's one more question worth asking. One quiet alarm worth checking, before it ever has a reason to get loud. Most people will go their whole lives never knowing this number exists. You're not most people anymore. That's what this second half is really about. Not waiting for the fire. Just quietly, calmly, checking the detectors while everything's still good. You get to direct this part. So go direct it. One last thing, and I mean this. Everything I shared today is general information to help you ask better questions, not medical advice. I'm not your doctor, and I don't know your history. Before you change anything or read into any result, talk it through with the doctor who actually knows you. That's the person who turns a number into a plan.